Joe B. and Sonny, and they'd kind of got into it, and so Buddy had fired the Crickets. And so he had going to reform. Of course, he really didn't want to go on that last tour. He had a manager that was a thief, and Norman Petty out of Clovis, New Mexico, and he had all of Buddy's money tied up. And so he told him either Buddy had a house, he just got married in September, him and Mary Alina. And he didn't really want to leave his wife and go out on the road. Well, Norman Petty had arranged for GAC to book a tour, winter party. And worst time in the world to try to go across the north. But anyway, Buddy had to do it. And so he came, there was no band. So he came to Waylon and throwed him a bass guitar. At least he did go get him a guitar. Waylon couldn't afford one. He was wearing my pants out and he took all my shirts, so definitely he didn't have no money. Anyway, Buddy got him a bass, come to him and told him, said, here, we're going on the road. You're going on the road with me in 3 weeks. And he was working there at the KLL radio station. So Waylon, then Buddy went on down and got Tommy Olson out of Odessa and told him to go get a drummer. So we got a guy by the name of Bunch Nichols. They called him Goose. He woke up in a new world every morning, and that's really they called him a goose. Anyway, he was kind of a spastic drummer. Good boy though. So they put it all together, and Waylon had no earthly idea how to play a bass, none whatsoever. So Buddy came back and said, "You ready to go?" Waylon said, "I don't know how to play this thing." He said, "You'll learn on the road." Waylon was scared flat to it. You talk about driving a 10-pin nail somewhere, you could have done that at any time. Anyway, he was scared flat to death. But he got on the bus, and they rode buses like, they were not like street buses. They didn't have any living quarters. They didn't have any beds or anything like that. And there was a whole slew of them on that tour. Dion the Belmonts, J.P. Richards, which is a big bopper, Richie Valens, Buddy Holly, no boy by the name of Frankie Losardo. He was I don't think he sang too good, but he was with the Mafia, so they took him too. Anyway, they was all, making it down there, and that bus kept freezing up. Well, right before the last show there in Clear Lake, Iowa, they were coming across there, and it froze up. And old Bunch got his feet froze. And so they left him in the hospital, and they went on up to Clear Lake, played the show, and after the show, Buddy said, "I'm going to book an airplane." So we're going to go on over to Moorhead. That was right across from Fargo. The next show, he said, "We'll get there early and we get some rest and maybe get our clothes clean." Well, Waylon wasn't real crazy about the little planes, but Buddy was a pilot, and so there wasn't too much. He didn't worry too much. So they started to the airport, little bitty airport out there. And J.P. Richards come to Waylon and said, "Can I take your place?" And I'm motion sickness, and he's been getting the flu. He said, "Well, ask Buddy." So he went and asked Buddy, and Buddy said, "Waylon, you don't want to go on a plane?" He said, "Well, if he's sick." He said, "That's okay with me." And he said, "Okay." And so then Richie Valens seen this happening, so he goes over to Tommy also. Tommy said they flipped coin. Waylon said they didn't flip no coin. He was trying to put some dramatics into it, I think, for that movie. Anyway, he made a deal with Richie Valens, said he could take his place. And so Buddy turned around, he said, "It's only the stars. We're all going. The stars is riding." Cutting up, being silly. Then he turned around to Waylon and he says, "Hope that old bus freezes up on the way up there. You freeze your butt off." And he says, Nah. He said, "Well, I'm going to skunk you when we get back up there, when we get up the next show." Well, they was playing a little game that you use car tags to get hands, poker hands and things like. It's called skunk. Well, I said, "No, you ain't going to skunk me." He said, "Yeah." And he turned around to him, he said, "I hope that bus freezes up again on you." Well, I said, "Well, I hope that damn no plane falls out of the air." Well, it did. Plus Waylon's career and everything else that he ever hoped to do. went down with that plane, because nobody else in the world was going to have any faith in Waylon. And he had to come back to a little old bitty town there. He had a wife and 2 kids and no hope for a future. So he threw the guitar down and wouldn't touch it. Went to work for a lumber yard. And he worked over there. And meantime, also the song says, I went off to wound up in the paratrooper unit. Boy, that's a dumb stunt. Anyway, I was in there, and he just give up. He wasn't going nowhere. And I don't know what sparked it, but something happened. But he ran around. Biggest problem, he felt like he was responsible for Buddy's death, because he said, I hope your plane falls out of there. And we talked about that a lot. And I told him, I said, well, you can't make planes fall out of there. I said, hell, you can't even keep a job. How you going to make a plane if you fall out of the air? And he says, well, and he always felt responsible. But he kind of got over that. But all through his career, every now and then he'd say something about Buddy. And he'd wonder if Buddy would have done it this way. Because that was the guy that he had so much faith in Waylon. And he was going to take him on a world tour, let him open the shows, be the first one everybody's seen. And he was building Waylon. Anyway, as I say, he had to give that up. And he got out in Arizona, and he finally, started getting it back together. But Buddy was the greatest guy, I guess, greatest entertainer I guess I ever met. Now, I met a lot of them. A real old boy, Bill Medley, he's become a very good friend, a real great guy. The Righteous Brothers, and he's just that he's got that mannerism about him like Buddy had. But he's not close to Buddy. I hadn't found anybody other figure that was such a gentleman and a good guy as Buddy was. And he'd do anything in the world for you. He'd do things for kids. He let me come over to the studio, first studio I ever been in my life, and he recorded a record on Waylon. He spent his own money, $1,500 in 1958, which was a lot of money. And also he called New York and got a big old fat black guy called King Curtis and booked him to come in on the session. Well, King Curtis was the coasters, the one that had to take out the paper and all that. He was the king. And so he paid him $500 in plane fare to come down to Clovis, New Mexico and play on the session. Well, I got to go in there in that session. And I got in there and Buddy introduced me to his manager, Norman Petty. And he come out there with a big grin on his face and all that kind of stuff. As soon as Buddy left, he told me, he said, get over somewhere and get out of the way. Don't get nobody's way. So I learned to love him a bunch. I went over and told Waylon, I said, I'm going to go whoop that guy's butt. Because that wasn't what I said. And he said, no, you can't do it. I said, I'm going to drag him out of here. He smarted off me a while ago and told me to get out and get away from him. And he says, of course, that's the way we took care of things back in West Texas with his kids, just go hit somebody in the mouth. But anyway, I was ready to do it. Well, I told him, I said, don't do that. Don't do that. He said, he won't let me cut my record. And this is the record that he cut.